Chapter 21. The future lies in Alaska. Yes, Mystique had long since infiltrated Duncan's team. With her shape-shifting abilities, transforming into an alien required considerable effort to gather various intelligence on the aliens to avoid any discrepancies in appearance and behavior. She succeeded, blending in as the number of aliens increased by a few. The only concern was that Duncan could accurately sense the mental state of each alien, which would inevitably expose her. But so far, everything seemed normal. Moreover, she was fortunate to obtain the most crucial intelligence from Duncan and Coulson's riddle-like conversation, the information that the flyman was indeed a deviant. Yes, the Brotherhood had dealings with various mutants and naturally came into contact with those ancient beings who had lived for thousands of years, gathering some fragmented information. In the past, this information was practically useless, only serving some purpose during propaganda campaigns against mutants, arguing that mutants and ordinary humans were fundamentally different. But now, things were different. The origin of the mutant race is unknown, but according to Duncan and Shield's confirmation, Akari's is highly likely to be a deviant. Mystique frantically typed on her palm-sized device, her fingers flying. Even she couldn't hide her emotional turmoil and shock. Deviants, the source of mutants, had they really appeared? But upon closer thought, since there are mutants who can live for thousands or even tens of thousands of years, the appearance of a deviant who has lived for tens of thousands of years shouldn't be too surprising. The X gene of mutants can awaken a myriad of bizarre abilities, and the infinite mutation gene of deviants is even more so. Awakening a longevity superpower seems quite normal. She was unaware of the Celestials and had no idea that the Celestials had banded together to personally exterminate the deviants. The intelligent deviants who had built a prosperous civilization 20,000 years ago couldn't possibly have survived to this day. Soon, new information came back. Raven, is the intelligence reliable? Are you sure those two aren't playing you? That possibility can't be ruled out, but it's completely worth the risk. If the aliens obey Duncan's commands not through the worst-case scenario, telepathy, but through visual recognition, heat sensing, or pheromones, then Duncan can't possibly discover me. Raven was confident in her shape-shifting abilities. As long as it wasn't a problem with the mind, psyche, or thoughts, nothing else could go wrong. She urgently reported her significant discovery to the recipient, Magneto. Alaska, I understand. I will personally go to find our true ancestors. If the information is accurate, we mutants can genetically separate from humans, which will greatly unite our brothers and sisters worldwide. Many mutants, including the X-Men, still identify themselves as part of the human race to some extent, hence unwilling to stand against humanity, as it would be akin to killing themselves. But if it could be confirmed that mutants and deviants are one and the same, it would be an earth-shattering event, directly rewriting the entire history of mutants. On a steel island in the Pacific, Magneto closed the communication, his emotions fluctuating. He sat on his throne, lost in thought for a long time, even recalling the painful memories from the moment he awakened his powers. Decades of effort have finally seen a day of reward. I have found a breakthrough in the inevitable future of mutant extinction. Magneto suppressed his excitement and summoned Destiny. Destiny, a highly unique mutant, wore a mask with no eye holes, possessing the powerful ability to see through fate. With just a glance, she could see countless futures. In the Brotherhood, Destiny held a very special position. She rarely participated in most operations, only appearing when Magneto needed her, providing crucial intelligence. The last time she appeared was a few years ago when she informed Magneto and Professor X that the future of mutants was one of extinction, with no other possibilities. A new destiny has emerged, Magneto raised his voice. Our ancestors, the source of the X gene, the deviants have reappeared in this world. I believe he is not alone, there must be other deviant kin. As a leader, you shouldn't be overly emotional. It will become your fatal weakness. Destiny's voice was icy. Magneto calmed down. I need you to prophesize the future once more. I have already prophesized. What do you want to know? Will the emergence of deviants bring a new life to mutants? Isn't that so? Or is the information about deviants in Alaska false? Magneto retorted. It's true. I have seen new images. There is indeed a group of deviants in Alaska, Destiny said coldly. She also saw that the reptilian-like deviants that had appeared on Earth over the past few millennia were fundamentally different from the intelligent life deviants that Magneto hoped for, who had built a civilization tens of thousands of years ago, but both were indeed deviants. Destiny saw some things, but she chose not to speak, as the outcome for the future remained the same. If there was any difference, it was that Since the man named Duncan appeared with his aliens, the timeline for mutant extinction seemed to have significantly accelerated. But considering that extinction was the only path, dying sooner or later made no difference. Among the countless fragmented futures, the overall trend remains unchanged. The fate of mutants is still extinction. If you expect some different changes in this process, there are indeed some. Destiny coldly stated. The manner in which mutants perish has become more peculiar, transforming into another form. Magneto frowned, somewhat irritated. He wanted more specific information, but Destiny herself could only see fragmented, chaotic, and even reversed but overwhelmingly numerous images. How could she possibly detail everything to Magneto? Even if she spoke until her lifespan ended, she couldn't finish. She also lacked the patience. Destiny, the mutant who could see through fate, had a natural barrier with other mutants, a perception of reality formed after seeing the only certain future. Destiny left, paying no further attention to Magneto. At least there has been a change, perishing in another form. Then, I will find a way to lead my people toward the path of freedom. With my active intervention, I will ensure it. Magneto stood up, flew into the sky, and looked towards the direction of Alaska, his eyes burning with madness and deep anticipation. According to the intelligence leaked by Duncan, Magneto confirmed that the future of mutants might very well lie in Alaska. As for the possibility of it being a trap, a joke, even if it were a trap, Magneto believed that with his strength, he had the right to step into it. Chapter 22. Here comes the little flyboy. Alaska. Relatively speaking, this is a desolate land, sparsely populated. What it's most famous for are its dwindling gold mines and sled dogs. But few know that, apart from Alaskan dogs, there are also low-tier deviants that the celestial known as Arishem dropped on Earth thousands of years ago. Akaris floated high in the sky, looking down at the thick layer of snow beneath him. In the perpetually frozen deep lake, a large number of deviants lay dormant. The 11 of them had spent thousands of years fighting these things, a battle that almost spanned the entire history of human civilization. What exactly are those things? Icarus's expression was extremely grim as he stared down at the claw marks on his chest. The wounds had long since healed, but the shock of encountering the xenomorphs lingered. This was the first time Akaris had encountered creatures so similar to deviants, capable of rapid growth like them, yet fundamentally different in nature. He stood bathed in the falling snow. At that moment, another figure flew toward him, not particularly fast, but his arrival carried an unmistakable sense of overwhelming pressure. Magneto. Akaris frowned slightly. Having followed human history, he naturally knew of this man. At the same time, he looked further into the distance and noticed a red figure rapidly teleporting more mutants to the scene. Azazel. Icarus's frown deepened, filled with doubt and unease. From a distance, Azazel looked up, his gaze meeting Icarus's, and then he flashed a meaningful smile. During the Age of Apocalypse 4,000 years ago, Azazel had been one of Apocalypse's top soldiers. He had lived all the way into the modern era, witnessing all sorts of powerful individuals and major historical events firsthand. In Icarus's eyes, Azazel was far more noteworthy than Magneto. So, you're the flyboy. Magneto flew to a spot not far from Akaris and spoke slowly. His first sentence made Akaris lose his composure. Fly, what? Flyman, that's what everyone calls you. Magneto ignored Icarus's changing expression, unable to contain his excitement as he quickly asked, "You're one of the deviants, aren't you? How have you survived to this day? Longevity, or time travel?" Magneto, watch your words. I, Akaris, could never be a deviant. No need to hide it. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. has confirmed your identity as a deviant, not to mention Duncan. As Magneto spoke, a glint of eagerness flashed in his eyes, his sharp gaze scrutinizing Icarus's body from head to toe. S.H.I.E.L.D. was inclined to believe this guy's identity. But this strong physique, elegant lines, flawless skin, it doesn't quite match the characteristics of a deviant. Deviants, as the name suggests, are on average inferior to the Eternals. Their genes undergo rampant mutations, resulting in a bizarre variety of appearances and abilities among their kind. Icarus's appearance was far too refined. Akaris raised his voice. I am an Eternal. Born pure, perfect, powerful, and free from genetic defects. An Eternal. Magneto frowned, the enthusiasm in his eyes cooling. I remember the Eternals as nothing more than defeated strays, driven to extinction by the deviants. How can you be an Eternal? If you're an Eternal, how have you survived on Earth? What nonsense are you spouting? If it weren't for us Eternals constantly hunting deviants, how could you humans have lived so smoothly over the past few millennia? Icarus's anger flared. Deviants are nothing but beasts that feed on humans. You're insane to sympathize with them. He wanted to vent his anger by killing Duncan and the Xenomorphs but had failed. Now, this mutant had inexplicably shown up, spouting a bunch of incomprehensible nonsense. Icarus was actually millions of years old, but his memories had been repeatedly wiped by Arishem, and he had been sent to various planets to carry out missions. In reality, he only had memories of the past few thousand years on Earth and knew little about the planet's ancient history, let alone the fact that a group of Eternals had fled Earth 20,000 years ago. That's a real shame. You're not a deviant, and you're filled with prejudice, insulting deviants. You're a damn racist. Magneto had completely lost his patience. Unfortunately for you, I happen to be the most extreme kind of racist. Given his temperament, it was rare for him to engage in a conversation like this. After confirming that Icarus wasn't who he was looking for, he was even more disappointed. Eternals. What can Eternals do? These worthless beings are incapable of anything. Since you've survived to this day, there must be something special about you. Capturing you might give me a chance to find the real deviants. Magneto didn't waste any more words. He was never known for his patience, and as someone seeking identity and connection with the deviants, he had nothing more to say to the Eternals. He immediately took action. A powerful magnetic field erupted, and in Magneto's hands, it was like a docile child, completely enveloping Icarus. Icarus was unusually furious. According to the modus operandi of the 11 Eternals, they wouldn't easily interfere in human affairs outside of dealing with deviants. But now, Icarus truly couldn't hold back. Whoosh! Golden heat vision blasted out. Magneto's expression remained cold, clearly having anticipated this. With a wave of his hand, metal from all directions surged in, blocking the heat vision. On Earth, magnetic fields are everywhere. Using them to control the abundant metal minerals was undoubtedly the most efficient way to fight. But against an Eternal like Icarus, Magneto was also using the magnetic field to interfere with Icarus's physical form. You can fly freely without using Earth's magnetic field. Magneto was genuinely surprised. Using a planet's magnetic field can only make things slightly easier for me. How could I possibly rely on something like that? Icarus could fly by harnessing his own immense energy. He could even leave Earth and fly through space in his flesh and blood body. Much like Captain Marvel, the battle between the two powerhouses officially began. Icarus darted through the overwhelming cloud of metal, his golden heat vision shooting in all directions, cutting through everything in its path and piercing countless incoming metal minerals. But Magneto's abilities weren't limited to controlling metal. He was also using magnetic forces to strongly disrupt Icarus's bodily magnetic field. An invisible energy net formed, trapping Icarus and compressing his movement space. You're like a sparrow flitting around. It's best if you stay in a cage, Magneto said. Icarus kept moving, letting out a cold snort. Feeling the discomfort within his body, he forcefully surged upward, looking down at Magneto from high above. In the next moment, he plummeted downward. Magneto quickly retreated, and as far as the eye could see, countless materials were under his control, like an endless river, continuously surging toward Icarus. All around, the ground shook and the mountains trembled, as if the entire world had been thrown into chaos. The spectacle was earth-shattering, but for the time being, Magneto couldn't easily subdue the formidable Icarus. Suppressing him was one thing, but killing him would take more time. Give up. My people are here. You have nowhere to run, Magneto said. One after another, mutants radiating powerful auras were rapidly closing in on Icarus. Run. You think you'll run a second time? Icarus's hair was disheveled as he gritted his teeth and let out a cold laugh. He suddenly looked down at the shattered ice lake. Let's see who's running now. Chapter 23. Magneto's Grand Invitation. At this moment, the Broadway incident had yet to subside, and while the world was still grappling with the surge in superhuman crimes, another earth-shattering piece of news spread across all major organizations and powers. Magneto's Brotherhood had suddenly appeared in Alaska, engaging in a fierce battle with a formidable enemy. It seemed they had also been ambushed by a group of mysterious, powerful individuals, suffering devastating losses. Rumors circulated that several key members had been killed. This was a shocking development. The one who had been dealt a blow was none other than Magneto, a seasoned professional who had spent years honing his skills and dedicating himself to his cause. A man who was either in prison or on his way there, a mutant leader whom humans dared not kill even if they managed to capture him. Who had dared to attack Magneto? And who could possibly make Magneto suffer such a defeat, causing the entire Brotherhood to suffer heavy losses? On various dark web platforms, countless ambiguous messages spread like wildfire, making it difficult to distinguish truth from lies. Rumors ran rampant, and chaos ensued. Anyone with even a hint of status wanted to gather information, at the very least to find out who had managed to take down Magneto. Who on earth possessed such power? In the dilapidated Wayland building, Duncan sat on a couch, idly swirling a glass in his hand. It wasn't wine, just plain water. He stared at the computer screen in front of him, taking in all the rumors circulating on the dark web. So, Magneto took a hit. Just Akari's alone clearly doesn't have that kind of power. If he wasn't beaten to death by Magneto, he should consider himself lucky. It's likely that their battle caused the deviants frozen in the lake to awaken. Duncan pondered for a moment, suspecting that other Eternals might have joined the fight. He recalled that among the 11 Eternals, one possessed super speed, much like the Flash from the neighboring universe. This ability allowed them to quickly transport their comrades from around the world to the front lines, making it a top-tier skill for calling reinforcements, second only to teleportation. If Magneto's Brotherhood had to face both the Eternals and the Deviants simultaneously, and without being familiar with their combat styles, it was only natural that they would suffer a major defeat. Magneto is a staunch extremist. I wonder what his expression will be when he realizes that Akari's isn't the kind of deviant he imagined, but instead, the ancestors he idolizes are actually a bunch of big black dogs crawling on the ground. Duncan slumped back into the couch, muttering to himself and letting out a soft chuckle, clearly in a very good mood. Around him, a group of xenomorphs and one human gathered, guarding his safety. In the entire building, aside from Duncan, only the queen in the underground cavern was more important. Was this intentional? Did you feed false information to Magneto? Elektra's face was stiff. Despite her efforts to control her emotions, she occasionally let out a look of resentment. She was constantly devising escape plans, fantasizing about how she would carve beautiful scars into Duncan's calm and handsome face once she regained her freedom. Elektra wasn't anxious about the mutants' predicament, she was anxious about her own life and actions being controlled by Duncan. "Why do you say that, rookie assassin lady?" Duncan said. "I just had a chat with a SHIELD agent. Even you didn't understand what was said, so how could Magneto have known? Let's not talk about mutants. What exactly do I need to do to satisfy you?" Elektra desperately wanted to kill this man, but every time she entertained the thought, the parasite in her chest would wriggle, a clear and terrifying warning. This feeling was utterly panic-inducing. However, Elektra had also gained enhancements from the xenomorph genes, superior strength, speed, and regenerative abilities. Her power had skyrocketed, elevating her beyond the ordinary. This made her both happy and unhappy at the same time. Duncan raised an eyebrow in surprise. "What makes you think you can earn your freedom from me while still alive? Or would you rather work for an organization like the Hand than serve me? At least I'm generous enough to enhance your abilities and extend your lifespan." Elektra opened her full, red lips but found herself at a loss for words. In a way, the man wasn't wrong. Between two equally unsavory options, she seemed to have no choice but to pick the lesser evil. "What do you need me to do, new boss?" Elektra asked, as if all her strength had drained away, her head bowing low. "Just stay by my side. I can't handle everything myself. For example, when I finally decide to wipe out the Hand," Duncan said casually. Elektra looked puzzled. "You might not realize how powerful the Hand is. With just you and these xenomorphs." "No, I'm well aware. I also know who the true masters behind the Hand are, those otherworldly entities from beyond Earth. Their fate is already sealed," Duncan replied. As they spoke, a xenomorph walked up behind Duncan. This wasn't unusual. Xenomorphs weren't statues. Protecting Duncan's safety didn't mean standing still indefinitely. But the moment this xenomorph moved to attack Duncan, Elektra, who had been seething with resentment and despair just moments ago, transformed as if a switch had been flipped. Driven by instinct to protect Duncan, she instinctively drew her blade and blocked the claw aimed at Duncan's neck. Clang! Elektra intercepted the strike. At the same time, the other xenomorphs sprang into action, perfectly coordinated. In an instant, they disarmed the rogue xenomorph, severing its limbs and piercing its shoulder with a tail, lifting it into the air. "I was wondering how long you could hold out. I didn't expect you to break so quickly," Duncan said calmly, turning around. The xenomorph's form shifted, eventually transforming into a person. "Mystique, Raven, you knew from the start?" Raven stared intently at Duncan. "Of course, I share an inseparable mental connection with every xenomorph. So when you slipped in, it was like finding a curry-flavored vegetable patty in a box of delicious egg tarts. Awkward, don't you think? Duncan sighed, patting Mystique's cheek. Nice texture, he thought, then gave it a firm pinch. Mystique showed no reaction. This level of interaction was trivial, incapable of eliciting any form of emotional response from her. Had she not been certain that this man was utterly obsessed with xenomorphs, she might have tried seduction. But after some thought, she concluded that such a calm and collected man would likely be immune to such tactics, so she abandoned the idea. Why? Raven pressed, unwilling to give up. Why did you deliberately spread false information, using me to strike at the Brotherhood? Maybe you're a mutant too, and your abilities come from the X gene. True, that's theoretically possible. But I could also be from Professor X's side, sent to weaken you, Duncan said. However, I never gave you any concrete information. You chose to believe what you wanted to believe. It was your own actions that led to your people's deaths, not mine. Raven frowned, her gaze fixed on Duncan. After a moment, a device on her arm vibrated. Eric wants to talk to you. Duncan ordered a xenomorph to release Raven's arm. Raven didn't attempt anything foolish, like attacking Duncan to escape. Instead, she activated the device's speaker. If this was your way of sending me an invitation from the start, I must say, it worked. This little game of yours was quite effective. Magneto's voice rang out. Kid, let's talk now, about the true deviants. In return, I'll give you what you want. Those damned, lowly reptiles that crawled out of the lake to ambush us. Chapter 24. Do you know how much this hurts mutants? You sound like you're in a bad mood. Did you lose a lot of people in Alaska? Facing Magneto, even in this unconventional first conversation, Duncan remained calm. He showed no signs of nervousness, anxiety, or any other unnecessary emotions. Just by listening to Magneto's hoarse yet unrestrained voice, filled with anger and frustration, Duncan already had a good idea of the situation. Unlike other major organizations that could monitor the situation in real time via satellites, Duncan didn't know the specifics of the battle. But considering how quickly Magneto had picked up on the subtle signals Duncan had sent and responded so promptly. From what I know, the deviants are strong, but they alone shouldn't be enough to cripple your Brotherhood, Duncan said. There were also several Eternals involved in the fight, each with powerful and practical abilities. Under any other circumstances, I could have killed them all single-handedly. But they escaped too quickly. Magneto's tone grew slightly heavier. For someone of Magneto's caliber and composure to show such obvious emotional fluctuation, it was clear that the Brotherhood's losses were far greater than Duncan had initially estimated. Or perhaps it was because Magneto had failed to achieve his goal, damaging his authority in the process. Also, I refuse to acknowledge those crawling creatures on the ice as deviants. Kid, no matter how much you know or where you got your information, you'd better rethink your words. At this moment, Magneto finally revealed the discovery that he found most intolerable. Losing people would only make Magneto angry, but now, it was beyond mere anger. Being attacked by both the Eternals and the Deviants would cause casualties for any organization on this planet. That's something you shouldn't dwell on. To make the conversation easier, Duncan grabbed Mystique's seemingly slender but well-trained arm and pulled her closer. Mystique remained expressionless. She had experienced many dangerous and complex situations, and her mental fortitude was well honed. Being humiliated by Duncan in various ways was just a minor scene to her. She had already prepared herself for this. This was something that Elektra, who was still new to the game, couldn't handle. However, if you're trying to deny that these animal-like deviants have any connection to mutants, there's no need for that, Duncan said. So you're saying these inferior creatures are the ancestors of mutants? No, of course not. The deviants are closely related to mutants, that much is true. But it's not the deviants that attacked you, Duncan explained. Magneto fell silent for a moment. There's more than one type of deviant. There are many types. On Earth alone, there have been two kinds. One is the inferior creatures you mentioned, which you've already encountered. The other went extinct 20,000 years ago due to an irresistible force. Duncan counted on his fingers. Beyond Earth, in the vast universe, there are even more types of deviants. Some have gone extinct, while others are thriving, having built civilizations far more advanced than Earth's. That's a lot of information. I can't help but wonder if you've gone mad, Magneto said. In this world, it's the mad ones who lead the way. You don't think those who follow the rules and love order would become great revolutionaries, do you? Duncan spread his hands and then slowly closed them. Thank you for the compliment. For a moment, Magneto was genuinely unsure. Was this a lie, or perhaps a lie mixed with some truth? What about the Eternals? Mystique suddenly asked. Similarly, for every type of deviant, there's a corresponding type of Eternal. That's the iron rule. The creators of this world surely love to create in pairs, Duncan said. Tell me, what exactly happened 20,000 years ago? You'd better not lie. Tell me everything you know, and I'll find a way to verify the truth. Magneto's voice came through the communication device. Interesting. If I'm not mistaken, you're already planning how to crush my forces, capture me, and interrogate me for information, aren't you? In fact, you're probably thinking about who has telepathic abilities so you can extract knowledge directly from my brain. Duncan let out a low chuckle. In fact, Magneto was indeed planning to do just that. Given the gravity of the situation, how could he rely solely on Duncan's words? After all, Duncan wasn't like Professor X, a long-established figure with a proven track record. Not even S.H.I.E.L.D. could protect Duncan. That was Magneto's stance. If you think I'm scheming something nefarious, you'll get nothing from me. Don't underestimate my power. I have many means to use at critical moments, or you'll suffer greatly, just like what happened when the Deviants and Eternals suddenly appeared and attacked you, Duncan said slowly. I've captured a few Deviants. I can hand them over to your pets for hosting. Bingo. I love conversations like this. That solves the problem, doesn't it? 10 Deviants per question. Fair price. Duncan clapped his hands. 5. Take it or leave it. Magneto couldn't be bothered to haggle over numbers with someone like Duncan, who had been a nobody not long ago. Given his personality, if he weren't so unsure about Duncan, he would have already taken action. Why use words when force could solve the problem? But until he could confirm Duncan's true origins and sources of information, he could afford to be patient for a short while. By the way, among the deviants you captured, is there a deviant leader? Duncan had long been eyeing that cunning and powerful leader-level deviant. If you're talking about the largest and strongest one, no. If it weren't for that beast, the Brotherhood wouldn't have suffered such heavy losses. That creature even took Juggernaut in the end. Wait, did you say Juggernaut? The deviant leader took Juggernaut? Duncan, who had been indifferent until now, was visibly surprised. Is this Juggernaut a proper mutant? Mystique suddenly interjected with a mocking tone. You've been putting on an act all this time, but you've just lowered your performance at the most inopportune moment. Do you have some special feelings for that oaf Juggernaut? Magneto, thousands of miles away, also looked puzzled. Juggernaut was one of the Brotherhood's key members, Professor X's brother, with an indestructible body and immense strength. He was a bit dim-witted, but was Juggernaut really worth Duncan's surprise? He hadn't interacted with Duncan up close and remained silent, waiting for Mystique's judgment. But before Mystique could speak, Duncan spoke first. Folks, whether you believe it or not, if luck is against us, and Juggernaut is indeed what I suspect, we're in big trouble. Because Juggernaut possessed a reserve of energy far beyond ordinary imagination, something that was rarely activated. And the source of that power was also a multiversal-level entity. 11 comments 0 vote. Chapter 25. Returning to old habits should be fun. In Duncan's understanding, no matter what the situation, whenever mutants are involved, simple matters tend to become complicated. Political and social issues are just one aspect. If we judge purely based on power, there are a few troublesome individuals among the mutant community who are hard to pin down. A prime example is the Omega-level mutants, who possess limitless potential. Interestingly, the same mutant might be Omega level in one universe but mediocre and lacking potential in another. The X gene, derived from the deviants, always carries various uncertainties. And Juggernaut is precisely one of those individuals who demands attention. Strictly speaking, Juggernaut isn't even a mutant. In most universes, Juggernaut's power comes from an ancient and terrifying force, the supreme demon of the multiverse, residing beyond the dimensions of the Crimson Cosmos, Cyttorak. Many powerful spells used by the Kamar-Taj lineage draw their power from Cyttorak. It's unclear whether Cyttorak has a peculiar obsession with the Infinity Stones or if it's just a twisted sense of humor, but he generally doesn't mind others using a bit of his power. However, he enjoys scattering crimson gems across the multiverse. Each crimson gem acts as an anchor point, directly connecting to Cyttorak and receiving his immense power. And in most universes, the one who bears the power of the crimson gem is none other than Juggernaut. The deviants have the ability to absorb the life force and genes of various life forms, and they can alter their own forms based on the genes they absorb. You all know this, right? I'm guessing many of your comrades have been absorbed by the deviants, Duncan said. Raven sneered, what does that prove? That ability is despicable, but it's still far from matching you. Duncan shrugged, be wary of the deviant leader who captured Juggernaut. Do you want to guess why that leader didn't take anyone else but Juggernaut? If luck is against us, you'll soon be facing an unimaginably powerful enemy. The deviant leader who absorbed Juggernaut? Magneto clearly didn't believe it. He knew Juggernaut's strength all too well. At most, it would make the deviant leader's body indestructible, but that didn't mean it couldn't be dealt with. However, disbelief aside, Magneto had seen his fair share of storms and had full confidence in his own power. But since the mysterious Duncan had emphasized this point, he had already raised his guard. Let's start the transaction. You asked a question, and I've answered. Now, send me 5 deviants. I still have some trust in the reputation of one of the 2 poles of the mutant world, Duncan said. What exactly happened to the Eternals and Deviants 20,000 years ago? Magneto asked his question. The 2 sides fought for control of Earth. And the result? That's another question. Pay the deposit first. Quote. Don't stay silent. Even if I tell you who won or lost, you'll definitely ask about the fate of these 2 races and why they disappeared from Earth. The value of this information far exceeds your imagination, Duncan replied. When it came to the Celestials, beings who started at the level of strong Skyfathers, such information was worth exchanging for several batches of deviants. The 2 sides ended their communication. As for Raven, Magneto didn't mention asking Duncan to release her. Both sides understood that anyone with half a brain wouldn't sabotage their own channels during the initial stages of cooperation. As long as Raven was alive, she could serve as a communication medium for Duncan and observe him up close. Once valuable secrets were extracted, she could report them to Magneto immediately. Duncan stood up, stretched, and ordered the Xenomorphs to release Raven. Find a way to bandage yourself, Duncan said casually, glancing at the penetrating wound on Raven's shoulder. Raven remained expressionless, simply manipulating the nearby muscle cells to wriggle and reshape, quickly repairing the injury. You seem a bit anxious. I believe it's not because of Eric, but because of Juggernaut, Raven observed Duncan's expression. With a sharp gaze, Duncan paused, then admitted, anxious. For a moment, yes. As I said, you know nothing about Juggernaut and have no understanding of what might happen in the future. You mentioned it would only happen if luck is against us. I'm more curious about what exactly makes Juggernaut so significant to you. An indestructible body. Such an ability is insignificant in the face of Magneto. All he needs to do is bury Juggernaut underground and pile metal on top of him. No matter how tough the body, it would be useless. Duncan smiled slightly but didn't respond. Instead, he took out a xenomorph egg and placed it in front of Raven. I've been wanting to sneak underground to see what's going on, but the xenomorphs have always stopped me. This time, it should be fine, right? Raven said, her heart skipping a beat as she watched the egg open, though she maintained a calm facade. When the facehugger leapt onto her face, Raven, experiencing this for the first time, finally couldn't hold back her reaction. She instinctively raised her hand to swat the creature away. Thud! Duncan punched Raven in the stomach, and that single blow was enough to let the facehugger latch onto her face and complete the implantation. After a while, when Raven woke up, the first thing she did was check her body. So, it seems I've become your slave, just like that little woman over there. Raven moved gracefully, attempting to approach Duncan, but before she could take a step, Duncan interrupted her. If you're thinking of leaving me, finding a place to perform open chest surgery to remove the xenomorph, give up. I won't give you the chance. Raven's face stiffened, her smile slowly fading as a fierce glint appeared in her eyes. But there was nothing she could do. Every move she wanted to make had been blocked by Duncan. I need to improve my strength quickly. Not just my own personal power, but I also need to build a sufficiently large army in a short time. Duncan pondered. To rapidly expand the xenomorph numbers, there were 2 main factors. First, the queen's egg-laying speed, which was currently about 5 to 10 eggs per day, though the rate was increasing over time. Duncan guessed this was because the queen had evolved from an ordinary xenomorph and was inherently limited in terms of reproduction. Second, a stable and reliable source of hosts. Parasitizing ordinary animals was out of the question, as the resulting runner xenomorphs were too weak. Parasitizing a large number of humans. Duncan himself was human, and doing such a thing at this time would provoke hostility from the entire world. Parasitizing only death row inmates wasn't particularly meaningful either. So, the truly cost-effective option was to target those whose locations and population distributions Duncan had already mapped out. Chapter 26. Duncan proves Fury's keen insight. The vampires were in deep trouble. Logically speaking, major organizations around the world had, to varying degrees, participated in operations to exterminate vampires. As a result, vampires were well aware of their place in the food chain and generally didn't act too brazenly. Perhaps it was Frost, who had wanted to become the blood god, but was killed by Blade, who had made things too high profile, drawing renewed attention to vampires from all sides. The vampires racked their brains trying to figure out why, of all the organizations in the world, the damn Duncan had set his sights on them. Nighttime in New York was a place where prosperity and crime were inextricably intertwined. In some quiet alleyways, eerie shadows flitted by silently and swiftly. Occasionally, a drunkard, stumbling around looking for a place to relieve himself, would rub his eyes, thinking he had seen something wrong. Ordinary people were ignored, but the vampires had nowhere to run. Bang! The door was violently torn open, and a group of xenomorphs stormed in, launching a brutal cleansing of one vampire stronghold after another. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! It's not the Daywalker. What the hell are these things? Xenomorphs. These damn things are xenomorphs. Run, run my ass. Do you know how much these things are worth on the black market? The price has skyrocketed to tens of millions of dollars. Get them. Just catch one, and we can retire. Chaos erupted. Most of the vampires turned and fled, while a few stared intently at the xenomorphs, pulling out weapons with a fanatical gleam in their eyes, eager to capture one. Bang, 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 rat-tat-tat. Idiots, hold your fire. What if you kill it? Dead bodies aren't worth anything. HMPH, these xenomorphs are strange. They're not killing the fleeing idiots, just cutting off their limbs. Some vampires, confident in their physical strength, sneered and discarded their firearms, attempting to take on the xenomorphs bare-handed. The existence of xenomorphs had already spread worldwide. Any organization with some level of influence knew about them. Moreover, the xenomorphs that had appeared weren't the monstrous abomination xenomorph, which only fueled their madness. However, no matter how grand their ambitions, they needed the strength to back them up. In the face of the mechanical, ruthless xenomorph squad, the complex building environment quickly turned into a bloody slaughterhouse. The xenomorphs moved like terrifying ghosts, appearing and disappearing in any area, their coordination seamless. From the start, without any communication, they executed tactical maneuvers as if they had been calculated by a computer countless times. Admittedly, xenomorphs weren't invulnerable. Firearms could inflict some damage on ordinary xenomorphs, but such losses were acceptable. Don't forget, the vampires were using 21st century Earth firearms, not the advanced weapons from decades in the future seen in movies or comics. One vampire, carrying a rocket launcher, was about to fire at a xenomorph wreaking havoc in the crowd. But in the next second, his hands were severed by a blade. You're making this difficult for me. If too many vampires die, I won't be able to deliver. Elektra landed lightly on the ground, and not a single xenomorph attacked her. Immediately, some vampires turned their guns on her and opened fire. Clang, clang, clang. With just one knife, Elektra deflected all the bullets with precise strikes, showcasing her superhuman abilities. Damn it, who is this woman? Why aren't the xenomorphs attacking her? In the chaotic scene, the vampires howled, cursed, and begged for mercy, falling like wheat under a scythe. These blood-sucking creatures now had their own red blood gushing out like waterfalls, painting a macabre masterpiece across the area. Elektra showed no mercy. She had no fondness for these vampires and led the xenomorphs in a relentless harvest. What was even more astonishing was that most of the vampires attacked by the xenomorphs didn't die. The xenomorphs severed their tongues and transported them like cargo. Some used their tails to skewer several vampires like kebabs, while others simply grabbed a few by the collars and hauled them away. In New York City, a trail of bright red blood stretched out. Pairs of eyes watched this scene unfold, silently observing. Another stronghold destroyed. I went to take a look. Nothing but severed limbs, with a few unlucky corpses left behind. Tisk tisk. Who's that girl? She's ridiculously strong. A mutant who's joined Duncan. It seems xenomorphs can only parasitize living hosts. That's crucial intel. Next, we need to figure out how the xenomorph embryo grows inside the host, whether it can be surgically removed, and if a superhuman with regenerative abilities can survive after the chestburster emerges. As long as they were normal humans, they had no fondness for vampires. These creatures were nothing but parasites on humanity. Now, seeing the vampires face an even more terrifying group and the prospect of being parasitized, those who witnessed this scene felt a strange sense of absurdity. After all, vampires were expendable. How many died didn't matter. But had Duncan's methods become so brutally direct? Was he no longer even bothering to pretend? I remember that idiot Blonsky was parasitized, right? And then he died. He had Hulk-like strength, so he must have had powerful regenerative abilities, yet he died. Blonsky might have been killed in the end. That doesn't prove superhuman regeneration is ineffective. In a world where superhumans weren't rare, there were naturally many smart people who logically deduced the characteristics of the xenomorphs. These creatures, capable of parasitizing hosts to gain their powers and seemingly becoming stronger than their hosts, were utterly fascinating. For some ambitious individuals, the impact was unprecedented. Who could have imagined such a creature? Now they existed. So, what was the upper limit of this mysterious creature's abilities? And, where did they originate? Were they really created by that guy Duncan? S.H.I.E.L.D. Headquarters. Fury faced 5 screens, each displaying one of the most powerful people in the world. Nick Fury, you've done well. The 5 praised Director Fury. One of them said, the invoice for $200 million that you submitted earlier made me think you were playing a low-level joke. Are you really going to spend $200 million to deal with an ordinary young man and the toys around him? We even suspected that you were trying to take advantage of the situation to defraud funds. Another chimed in, but facts have proven, Fury, you're still the world's best agent with the sharpest instincts. That man is worth every penny. So, Fury, when will you bring him into S.H.I.E.L.D.? After he's wiped out all the vampires in the world. Wiping them out isn't realistic, but we want to know, what's the reproduction rate of the xenomorphs? How do they reproduce? What's their social structure? Is there a queen-like role dedicated to breeding? Can we control them like Duncan does? Fury, motherfucker, how could he have predicted that, in such a short time, Duncan's simple actions would cause a global stir? He certainly hadn't expected xenomorphs to have such terrifying racial abilities and growth potential, nor such an unprecedented, insane method of expansion. At this moment, Fury fully demonstrated the professionalism of a top spy. He remained expressionless, calm and composed, as if he had anticipated this outcome all along. He said gravely, it's nothing. This is just my duty. However, to take the next step in dealing with him, I'll need more funding. After the meeting, Dum-Dum, report the latest situation. Fury gathered his team and issued orders. I successfully infiltrated Kamar Taj. Not that, Fury interrupted the Dum-Dum in front of him. Besides, it was one of your lucky clones that joined Kamar Taj. Their success isn't your success. Moreover, I highly suspect your so-called infiltration was orchestrated by the Sorcerer Supreme herself. Dum-Dum shook his head repeatedly. At least it shows my talent has been recognized by the Sorcerer Supreme, right? Are you sure? Why is it that after years of effort, you couldn't even find the door to Kamar Taj, but now you're succeeding at everything without fail? Don't you think she knows your identity? If not, I'd have to question her competence. Or is it that she, a ruthless figure who's guarded Earth for centuries, is about to die and has decided to take in disciples out of the goodness of her heart? Maybe I've awakened a magic learning gene, like magic affinity or something. You should go wash your brain with Himalayan ice water. While we haven't fully deciphered the mysteries of magic, it's likely there's no such thing as affinity. You don't need to absorb wind or earth elements from the air into your body. Boss, not having cracked it yet only means one thing, not enough funding. You could allocate a more generous budget to me, and I'll take on this monumental task. With enough money, I could even take this question straight to the Sorcerer Supreme herself. Fury coldly stared at the Dum-Dum in front of him. He was certain this clone, ignorant of sensitive information, wasn't the level 10 original. This meant the original Dum-Dum had skipped work again. Had the original joined Kamar Taj to study magic under the Ancient One? If so, Fury wouldn't feel proud or delighted at his subordinate's capabilities. He'd just think Dum-Dum had lost his mind and should be eliminated at the first opportunity. A level 10 S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, tasked with global responsibilities, joining Kamar Taj to learn magic. In Fury's eyes, that was idiotic. Kamar Taj's strength lay in the Ancient One and her few disciples, in their powerful magic and artifacts, in their vast mystical knowledge and global magical network, not in their cheap magic apprentices. Over the years, how many magicians had left Kamar-Taj after learning some magic and returned to human society? And how many of them had mastered teachable, inheritable magic? Or wielded artifacts while roaming the streets? S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't short on magicians. If they really wanted to recruit, they could easily gather a group from around the world, though some would undoubtedly be black magicians with hidden agendas. Oh, if Fury needed a reason to nod, it would be if Dum-Dum were a once-in-a-century magical prodigy, worthy of the Sorcerer Supreme personally taking him under her wing. For Fury to believe that, he'd sooner believe Duncan would announce tomorrow that he'd developed a miracle cure for mutants, just like the reason Duncan gave when applying for government subsidies while establishing Wayland Corp. Dum-Dum, as always, was only good at asking for money, swallowing up who knows how much funding every year. It was enough to make Fury's hair fall out. A third of the $200 million funding he'd secured from the 5 major powers had been eaten up by Dum-Dum. Dum-Dum, my patience has limits. The next time I ask, you'd better give me something truly valuable. What have you achieved after all these years of spending endless money? Understood, boss. I'll hold a brain cloud meeting with my other clones. Dum-Dum's expression turned serious. He paused, then said, as for Duncan, I've made some discoveries. I've roughly calculated the Xenomorphs' egg-laying efficiency. The daily increase is definitely no more than 5. He's captured a lot of vampires, but not all are for parasitism. Some are kept as food reserves. Everyone present remained unfazed. They'd seen all sorts of madness, cults worshipping cosmic entities or demons, conducting sacrifices. Duncan's actions were small potatoes in comparison. Besides, vampires weren't even human. If vampires could hunt humans, why couldn't humans hunt them? Duncan's current total forces shouldn't exceed 20 xenomorphs, Dum-Dum said. Fury glanced at him. If he let you calculate that, it means your calculations fall within his expectations. I don't believe Duncan would be so transparent about his strength. Perhaps the xenomorphs have a higher reproduction rate. So far, we haven't found any xenomorph larvae or eggs. We're not sure how long their growth period can last. Duncan's actions are very cautious. He's never sent xenomorphs out with eggs, preferring to go through the trouble of crippling vampires and capturing them. In other words, Duncan might have a batch of intentionally unhatched eggs or facehuggers, possibly to be used at a critical moment. Find some vampires likely to be targeted by Duncan and implant listening devices in them, Fury ordered. We need to be ready to move at any moment. We can't allow him to grow unchecked like this. A dozen xenomorphs, aside from the abomination xenomorph, weren't too difficult to deal with. Heavy firepower could handle them. But if their numbers increased, it would be a disaster. S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't tolerate such an uncontrollable force, or rather, species, operating outside their control. This wasn't about Fury's personal character or lust for power. It was S.H.I.E.L.D.'s duty, plain and simple. Not thinking and acting this way would mean they lacked even the most basic professional competence. We've got trouble. Dum-Dum's expression suddenly changed, and he tapped his head. I already know. A T0 level threat has arrived in New York's suburbs, carrying several metal boxes across the sea. Fury's face turned grim. Chapter 27. Calling for backup, huh? Duncan wasn't a fan of keeping a low profile, but when he saw Magneto effortlessly floating a pile of iron cages through the air, completely disregarding everything around him, flying all the way from Alaska to confront him, he couldn't help but feel how utterly surreal the scene was. Aren't you being a bit too flashy for a first meeting? Plenty of people would love to take you down, Duncan remarked. I actually hope humans launch a nuclear strike at me. That way, I can seize the opportunity to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. Magneto floated high in the air, over 10 meters above the ground, casually dropping the cages to the ground with a series of loud crashes. It was clear he truly didn't care, speaking with an air of complete composure. With all due respect, Mr. Eric, are you giving up? Completely disregarding humanity now? Duncan's face broke into a warm smile, as if he were having a friendly chat with an old friend. If it weren't for the swarm of aliens emerging behind him, his performance would have been flawless. Magneto remained expressionless. With a wave of his hand, he extracted metal elements from the soil, forming a massive metal ball that he hurled at Duncan. His attack was sudden, but Duncan, a master of surprise attacks himself, had anticipated this move. Almost the instant the metal ball formed, the abomination alien was already in motion, swinging its fist and smashing the ball into countless fragments. Is this your way of saying hello? Duncan said slowly. My way of saying hello to you, Magneto replied, flicking his fingers to create even more metal, which surged toward Duncan from all directions. Duncan remained calm, standing his ground as the aliens around him sprang into action at his command. From stillness to coordinated movement, it was as if a precise war machine had been activated. Each alien was insignificant on its own, but together, the dozens of aliens worked in perfect harmony, precisely countering every incoming attack. They even allocated defenses based on the size and strength of the attacks, each alien taking on the threats it was best suited to handle. Clang, clang, clang. A meticulous, layered defense formation took shape in an instant, demonstrating remarkable efficiency. Every second, countless attacks were deflected, corroded, or blocked with their bodies. This display even made Magneto pause. He stopped his assault, watching the aliens with interest. When you've seen the view from higher up, it's natural to find ordinary humans boring, like you. With these little creatures at your command, do you still consider yourself an ordinary human? Magneto was comparing the aliens to the deviants, concluding that, no matter how he looked at it, the aliens were stronger. A single alien was as fragile as an ant before him, and a group of them would only take a bit more time to handle. But with a larger number of super-powered aliens, like the cold, ruthless abomination alien, even Magneto had to take them seriously. Duncan wasn't yet a force Magneto needed to fully acknowledge, but after this skirmish, Magneto could see Duncan's immense potential. At least I still consider myself human, not an alien. For now, don't think I don't know, you have an alien inside your chest. I can sense its life force, Magneto said with a cold smile. If I hadn't confirmed that, I might have killed you the moment I saw you, instead of playing this little game with you. That's quite a difficult statement to respond to. I even hid Raven as a precaution against this very situation, Duncan sighed. Are you trying to use Raven to threaten me? No, not a threat. I know that if I used her to threaten you, you'd eventually abandon her. But what if we continue our transaction? I can provide you with information in exchange for the deviants you've captured. Duncan pointed to the tightly sealed iron cages, inside which the deviants were trying to tear through the impossibly thick metal. The abomination alien silently raised its head, its eyeless, grotesque face turning toward Magneto like an emotionless iceberg. Besides, I believe your old friend is watching everything here. Look, I can already sense his psychic presence on my aliens, he's observing us, Duncan said, pointing to Elektra behind him. This was the reason Elektra was here. Charles, get lost, Magneto said coldly. Eric, I just want to remind you not to make a move here, and there's no need to attack this boy. He's not our enemy. Of course I won't attack him, because he's no longer purely human. In pursuit of power, he abandoned his humanity. I admire that, Magneto said. He wanted to create a world without humans, so any ideology or action that distanced itself from humanity earned his approval, especially from someone as exceptionally talented as Duncan. Duncan's expression remained unchanged. In truth, if he wanted to, he could remove the alien from his body at any time, but he saw no need to make that explicit. He was far more interested in the deviants, extremely interested. This particular group of deviants had the ability to absorb the life force and genes of their targets, gaining the supernatural abilities of those they consumed. Even ordinary deviants possessed this ability. You two chat. I'll take my belongings now. With a thought from Duncan, nearly 20 aliens swiftly moved to surround one of the cages. Under Magneto's intrigued gaze, one of the aliens tore open its own body, splashing acid that instantly corroded the layers of metal. Such acidity, only vibranium or adamantium could withstand it, Magneto said, visibly surprised. This was extraordinary. The existence of such a creature was unnatural. A deviant tried to seize the opportunity to escape, but in an instant, it was swarmed by a group of aliens pinned to the ground. It let out a sharp screech, fighting back against the aliens but was completely overwhelmed. The aliens launched a relentless assault, and no matter how much the deviant struggled, it was futile. It was repeatedly knocked down, its body covered in wounds. I ran genetic tests on them. I have to admit, their genes are strikingly similar to the X gene, Magneto said coldly. So, this discovery has left you quite frustrated, Duncan nodded understandingly. Anyone would be surprised by this result, but don't worry. These deviants are not the same as mutants. That's what I wanted to ask you. Why do mutants still exist, while the deviants, the origin of mutants, have disappeared? You're quite cunning. That's really two questions, because the deviants failed the Creator's judgment and were wiped from the earth by the Creator's hand. Only a portion of humans who inherited the deviants' genes survived. Duncan focused on capturing the deviants, eagerly dragging them underground to begin the parasitic process. It wouldn't be long before he had a new batch of truly powerful soldiers, each with incredible growth potential. Neither Magneto, nor Professor X, nor S.H.I.E.L.D., nor any other faction observing this realized just how terrifying the deviants' potential for growth was. 10 deviants for this question, which involves ancient gods. It's a bargain, right? You're not going to renege, are you? Of course not. I never break my promises. But your price is steep, as deviants are becoming increasingly rare. We're killing them, and so are the Eternals. As Magneto spoke, his mind was already racing with thoughts about the gods. A deity, in ancient times, created the Eternals and the deviants. How terrifying must such a god be? It was almost unimaginable. After all, the top-tier mutants today possess the power to single-handedly threaten the entire world, yet Magneto still wouldn't dare claim that such individuals were stronger than the deviants who once dominated the Earth. But the deviants were wiped out. Magneto decided he would delve deeper into various myths and legends upon his return, searching for traces of these so-called gods. You'd better not be deceiving me or playing word games. I'll verify the truth, Magneto said as he ascended into the sky, leaving without a backward glance. Professor X, your old friend has left. Shouldn't you do the same? Honestly, I'm honored that you chose not to invade my mind, Duncan turned and addressed Elektra. Given Professor X's moral compass, he typically refrained from probing others' memories without consent. Eric didn't attack you for another reason, he suspects you might also be a mutant, perhaps one who has awakened the ability to create and control genetic organisms, Professor X's voice echoed through Elektra. Similar to Mr. Sinister. That's an interesting thought. I've never undergone an X gene test, Duncan replied casually. While Duncan was busy strengthening his forces, the ripple effects of his actions were already taking shape. The vampires, alarmed by Magneto's visit to Duncan, could no longer stand idly by. They decided to take the initiative and wage war against Duncan, seeking a powerful force to eliminate him. Master Caecilius, this is the situation. We need your help, you, the esteemed chief disciple of the Ancient One, to help us kill him. Chapter 28. Mages forced to brawl to reduce their debt. You want me to kill someone who controls strange creatures? The price for my services is high. Caecilius, with a few of his followers in tow, looked down on the vampires before him with disdain. And indeed, his disdain was evident. His dark eye circles, known to some as the price of using black magic, might be mistaken by others as a sign that these dark mages were workaholics who hadn't slept for days. In fact, Caecilius hadn't slept in a very, very long time. Sleeplessness was just one of the trivial costs of using magic. Beyond that, he had to offer his mind, body, and lifespan to the various deities who granted him magic. This was the price of using magic. Borrowing power meant repaying the debt. Under such a gaze, some of the weaker vampires instinctively averted their eyes, while a few of the more noble-born ones tried to meet his stare. We truly don't know where we went wrong with him, but he's already destroyed 7 of our bases in just 2 days. Hundreds of us have died or gone missing, said a vampire elder dressed in finery. Be confident, missing means dead. The luckier ones become that human's food, while the unlucky ones become hosts for those aliens. Caecilius was a man of principle. Though he looked down on vampires, since he had chosen to take this job, he had done some research on Duncan. I'll send one dark mage to kill him, Caecilius declared. Just one. We were hoping you would take care of it personally, the vampires present frowned. Fools. My main target is Kamar Taj. I won't waste my strength on a minor character. Caecilius shook his head, his elegant ponytail swaying, drawing everyone's attention. At least, the vampires couldn't help but glance at it. But he's not a minor character. In my eyes, he is. You bats from the sewers have never witnessed true greatness. Even my mentor, the Ancient One, needs to borrow power from that being. Caecilius sneered at the vampires. Even you were born because of that being. Without black magic, where would you vampires come from? The vampires looked confused, but Caecilius, having learned from Dormammu, knew the truth. Vampires originated from black magic. And since Dormammu was the deity who wielded black magic, Caecilius naturally believed that vampires were just inferior byproducts of Dormammu's creation, unworthy of attention. Another elder, deeply dissatisfied, muttered, "We shouldn't have sought out these dark mages. Paying to deal with Duncan feels unreliable. We should have gone to Baron Blood instead." But he was quickly silenced. Enough. Our clan has its own ways. Crash. At that moment, the sound of shattering glass echoed as Blade burst in, followed by a swarm of aliens. Looks like we had the same idea, targeting this place. But it seems the vampire you're looking for isn't here. Duncan's voice rang out. Blade drew his twin swords. My goal is different from yours. I leave no survivors. Even if they're human, as long as they side with the vampires, they die. As Blade spoke, his red eyes behind his sunglasses fixed on Caecilius. Caecilius curled his lips in a mocking smile, then shifted his gaze to Duncan, who was surrounded by several robust aliens. Those dark circles, a dark mage. I didn't expect an extra bonus. But the fact that vampires have teamed up with you has really lowered your standards, Duncan remarked. Dark mages were easy to spot. They were the only ones on Earth who followed Dormammu and bore such appearances. HMPH, I feel the same. It seems we at least agree on one thing. Vampires are the best material to be used and discarded. Caecilius grinned maliciously as he unleashed black magic. Dark mist spread, enveloping everyone in the room. The vampires who came into contact with it were instantly consumed. After a series of screams, their bodies disintegrated into black particles, flowing like water into an unknown realm before vanishing completely. Caecilius's expression improved slightly. Caecilius, what are you doing? We're allies. A vampire elder shouted. Allies? You defective products think you can be my allies? Did you really think I was after your money? You're only fit to be offerings to please the great Dormammu. While the vampires wanted to kill Duncan, Caecilius had a different plan. He wanted to kill them all. Every person on Earth would belong to the great Dormammu. This guy's not right in the head. Attack, Duncan ordered. Blade, without a word, charged at Caecilius with his swords. Duncan, however, knew how tricky the spatial magic of the Khmar-Taj lineage could be. Those golden portals weren't just for transportation, they could also be used to sever by closing them abruptly. So, Duncan focused on the other dark mages present from the start. Whoosh! A peculiar-looking alien, with fleshy tendrils on its body, quietly approached one of the mages, but the mage was prepared. Lowly creature, let me show you the power of a professional mage. The dark mage sneered, pulling a rod from his sleeve and charging at the alien with agile steps. My weapon is made of vibranium. It can withstand your acid blood. Good, a rare dark mage who hadn't completely lost his mind to Dormammu. He knew to use vibranium to counter the aliens' most troublesome trait, their acidic blood. But it seemed his brain wasn't entirely intact. Duncan's expression shifted slightly. Though he had expected the combat style of these mages, seeing it in person was still hard to take. Their defenses weren't much stronger than an ordinary human's, yet they loved to charge into melee combat with weapons like knives and rods, even against aliens, which were born for close-quarters combat. This brought to mind Doctor Strange, who, whenever he fought, would unleash a barrage of powerful spells without hesitation. Things like the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, the Sacred Sword of the Vishanti, and the Shield of the Seraphim. Just look at that lineup of spells: Sidorak, the Vishanti, the Seraphim, all deities of multiversal stature. Every spell Doctor Strange cast was borrowed from such beings. It's worth noting that Hoggoth is one of the Vishanti, the trinity of deities. Somehow, the local mages are a bit different from what I imagined. Are they worried about owing too much debt? Your master isn't very generous, is he? When magic isn't enough, fists will do. After some thought, Duncan concluded that these guys were just too poor, or perhaps Dormammu had grown stingy, since they couldn't even use magic freely. Moreover, the cost of using black magic was far higher than that of white magic. They were nothing compared to Doctor Strange, who had the backing of Khmar-Taj. No wonder they ended up being crushed by him. HMPH, do you even understand magic? Caecilius raised his hand, conjuring the rings of Ragador. A golden disc appeared in his palm, effortlessly slicing a drone alien in half. Facing the splatter of acidic blood, Caecilius raised his other hand, summoning a small portal to block the blood and send it away. If I wanted to, I could drop you all into the ocean in an instant, Caecilius said confidently. He thought Duncan was coming for him, but Duncan knew how difficult it would be to kill someone as skilled at escaping as Caecilius. From the start, Duncan had his eyes on the other dark mages. Amid the chaos, a melee-obsessed mage was already pinned down by an alien, screaming as he was dragged before Duncan. With practiced ease, Duncan picked up an alien egg from the back of one of his aliens and performed a facehugger implantation on the dark mage. Duncan wanted to test something crucial, and he was deeply excited about it. Sure enough, the moment the implantation succeeded, a powerful surge of magical energy emanated from the dark mage's body, and black substances began to spread slowly. Chapter 29. Dormammu, there's something dirty here. Originally, Duncan had personally taken action just to test how far the Xenomorph, born from parasitizing the deviants, could go. At least for now, there were no issues with mobilizing bodily energy. Normal Xenomorph can heal from superficial wounds within seconds, while normal deviants can mobilize their body's energy to quickly repair injuries. Duncan observed the deviant Xenomorph that had been split in two by Caecilius. Visible energy glowed at the wound, pulling the two halves of its body back together. Under normal circumstances, as long as its internal energy wasn't exhausted, given some time, it could slowly heal itself. This gave it a much stronger regenerative ability compared to ordinary deviants. Bodily energy, or rather life force, can be taken. This is a power derived from genes, so I'm not surprised. But what about magic? Duncan turned his attention to the dark mage who had been facehugged and was now surrounded by xenomorphs. Magic in the Marvel Universe is borrowed, and while xenomorphs can seize the superior genes of their hosts, effectively nullifying the host's regenerative abilities and achieving a form of transcendence and replacement, could these xenomorphs replace the host and take on the host's magical debts? Duncan was very interested in this. Although I don't necessarily plan to pursue the path of learning magic, having more options is always a good choice, Duncan mused, stroking his chin. Parasitism, are you trying to walk the same path as me? No need to go through all that trouble. With your abilities, you could simply join us, Caecilius said, immediately understanding Duncan's intentions. Instead of getting angry, he seemed somewhat enthusiastic. For a cold-blooded idealist, having someone occasionally agree with his ideology could bring a small measure of comfort. It's not the same. I know my joining would please Dormammu even more, but before that, let my little ones give it a try first, Duncan replied casually. At this point, Caecilius was nothing more than an incurable fanatic. Talking about anything else was useless, but bring up Dormammu, and he was all ears. The two were at a standoff, ready to fight at any moment, but neither made the first move. Meanwhile, the Xenomorph and the other dark mages were locked in a fierce battle. In this world, only the vampires were suffering. These poor creatures fought desperately, but neither black magic, nor the Xenomorphs, nor Blade were foes they could withstand. Even the new type of vampire, the Reapers, creatures painstakingly developed by the vampires as biological weapons, capable of feeding on both humans and vampires, stood no chance. Unfortunately, against enemies with both quality and quantity, there was no escape. They were eventually chopped to pieces by Blade. These things are really hard to kill. Looks like I have a new target, Blade said, poking the Reaper's mouth with the tip of his blade. Its mouth looks a bit like your spider. Let me correct you. What you call a spider is scientifically known as a facehugger. Also, comparing my facehuggers to the knockoffs created from Reapers, which are already knockoffs themselves, is quite insulting. As Duncan spoke, he took a moment to glance at the Reaper's corpse, which was immune to silver and garlic but vulnerable to sunlight. Blade, who didn't need to fight so hard and could have easily killed the creature with the help of the Xenomorphs, had rushed in eagerly, likely to prevent Duncan from capturing the Reaper alive for parasitization. Terrible behavior. What a waste, Duncan commented bluntly. Blade pretended not to hear, ignoring the surrounding Xenomorphs and focusing on the ever-composed Caecilius. Now it's just you, mage. Let me remind you, your people's combat skills are atrocious. Neither strong nor skilled. Of course, we can't compare to you, vampire, Caecilius replied. You're just little toys created by my master using black magic, while we're pilgrims. Following our master in search of truth. Caecilius admitted that it was unrealistic for dark mages to compete with a naturally gifted vampire like Blade in close combat. But that didn't stop him from looking down on Blade. I hate it when people call me a vampire. I'll carve my name into your corpse. Oh, what was your name again? Blade twirled his blades and charged forward. Go cool off in Antarctica. Caecilius raised his hand and conjured a moving portal, instantly swallowing Blade and making him disappear. I wanted to warn him, but he's not the type to take advice. When his mind is preoccupied with guarding against me, he might not realize that my delay in attacking you has a reason, Duncan said. This was the downside of dealing with agents. Their minds were always occupied with thoughts unrelated to the battle, which could affect their judgment at critical moments. Perhaps he knew but had no choice but to act before you, Caecilius said with a strange smile. This globally renowned sorcerer clearly had a favorable impression of Duncan. Duncan looked around. Besides Caecilius, only the face-hugged dark mage and one other dark mage remained alive. Caecilius, save me. The dark mage, pinned down by a deviant xenomorph, looked pleadingly at the only person who could save him. Returning to Dormammu earlier isn't a bad thing. On the path to eternal life and truth, you're one step ahead of me, Caecilius said, unmoved. The dark mage was utterly despairing, watching as the deviant xenomorph's tendrils pierced his neck. A series of ripples appeared as the dark mage's body rapidly shrank, eventually being completely absorbed by the deviant xenomorph. The improvement isn't significant. Magic, being an energy with an owner, is truly different from other energies, Duncan said, not holding out much hope. He waited to see the changes in the face-hugged dark mage. When the xenomorph finally burst out of the chest, the strange magical fluctuations reached their peak before quickly fading. Failed. Did Dormammu or Chthon see through it? Duncan pondered, stroking his chin. These two beings, one at a universal level and the other at a multiversal level, would indeed be capable of seeing through the xenomorph's substitution tactic. Duncan wasn't surprised. As Duncan had anticipated, Dormammu noticed something was wrong immediately. Something is stealing my power and refusing to pay the price, another one learning from the Ancient One. Chapter 30. The Art of War. In the vast dark dimension, countless lifeless planets floated in the void. Over billions of years, who knows how many living planets had been devoured by Dormammu, eventually turning into dead stars, mere decorations in the dark dimension. The invincible and majestic Dormammu angrily turned over, furious. In this vast universe, there were indeed a few troublesome deities or planets, but none of them irritated Dormammu as much as Earth. Just moments ago, Dormammu sensed that on this tiny planet, another individual was attempting to steal black magic. Although the amount was minuscule, roughly equivalent to what Dormammu had granted to Caecilius's followers, this was no excuse for these Earthlings to openly defy him. One Ancient One was bad enough, but at least the Ancient One was powerful. Let me see who did this. Dormammu opened his terrifying, planet-sized eyes. In his vision, endless magical particles surged like rivers, at his command. His gaze, through black magic, extended to a dark mage on Earth. And he saw the creature stealing his power, a deviant. No, not a deviant, though it bore some resemblance. Dormammu almost thought it was a new breed of deviant created by the Celestials. If that were the case, he would have to tread carefully, as the Celestials were a terrifying collective of deities, starting at the Skyfather level, far too powerful to provoke. This little thing is quite interesting. It's using genetic substitution to inherit power. Dormammu took a closer look, immediately intrigued. Even as an ancient deity, this was the first time he had encountered such a peculiar species. He had seen many lifeforms that grew stronger by consuming their enemies, such as certain deviants and the infamous annihilation wave in the cosmos. But a lifeform that could steal power through parasitism. This was a first. This thing is called a xenomorph. It can even inherit the black magic I granted to Earth's mages through this method. Dormammu's eyes lit up, brighter than stars. If he could decipher the essence of this lifeform and use it as a basis to create a vessel that could perfectly inherit his power, yet on a higher level, be unrecognizable to certain troublesome entities. Honestly, this had immense potential, far better than constantly raising his debt ceiling by granting black magic to Caecilius and those third-rate mages. If he had the chance to personally infiltrate Earth, Dormammu would be insane to continue relying on proxies to deal with the Ancient One. Every time Dormammu paid the price for using black magic, the suffering only grew. Soon, Dormammu first severed the Xenomorph's ability to steal black magic, then used black magic to relay a crucial directive. Spare no cost, seize these creatures called Xenomorphs. Caecilius quickly received Dormammu's command, his eyes sharpening as he stared at Duncan, unable to hide his surprise. It seems your master has given you new orders. At least, I don't think you're surprised by my Xenomorphs, Duncan said. Correct. Your performance seems to have greatly pleased my master, far beyond expectations, Caecilius admitted, his eyes scanning the aliens, clearly considering how to quickly eliminate them. Duncan was also preparing. At this moment, the abomination alien stepped forward from behind Duncan. He might question Caecilius's ideals, but he would never doubt his strength. Caecilius had once been the Ancient One's chief disciple and now wielded both the Vishanti's white magic and Dormammu's black magic, making him exceptionally dangerous. Just the mirror dimension spell alone, if successfully cast by Caecilius, would put Duncan in a very precarious position. This risk was necessary, otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to confirm certain things. But fighting you under these circumstances was unexpected. I won't give you the chance to use the mirror dimension, Duncan said. He had confirmed that the chestburster had failed to harness black magic. Combined with Caecilius's reaction, it was clear Dormammu had intervened, denying the Xenomorphs access. This was normal and nothing to be disheartened about. For some reason, I feel like you know a lot about me, about black magic, and even about my master Dormammu. Whatever the reason, you'll soon be one of us. Caecilius raised his hand toward Duncan. Truth belongs to Dormammu. Offer the Xenomorphs, join our glorious ranks, and I'll spare your life. Duncan didn't hesitate, displaying extraordinary decisiveness as he launched his attack. The mirror dimension wasn't invincible, its use had extremely stringent conditions. Duncan would never wait passively. In an instant, Duncan charged forward, and the Xenomorphs scattered around him also sprang into action. Normally, Duncan wouldn't personally engage in combat, as it was unnecessary. He knew exactly where his strength lay. As long as he survived, even if only one Xenomorph remained hidden somewhere in the world, that lone Xenomorph could evolve into a queen, ensuring the survival of the entire Xenomorph species, no matter how many others perished. But in this situation, facing such a dangerous enemy, Duncan took the lead. Whoosh! His speed was so fast that to the average eye, he left afterimages. His arms, though merely robust, seemed to activate every muscle fiber as he swung, unleashing overloaded power that caused his muscles to visibly swell. Caecilius's eyelids twitched, but he acted immediately. Thin, elongated red magical threads sprouted from his hands, forming a dense network that reached out toward the Xenomorphs charging from all directions. This is Kamar Taj's magic. How ironic, Duva sneered, mentally informing all the Xenomorphs about this spell. The Xenomorphs, ensnared by these thin whips, began leaping and dodging along the walls. Some of them tore open their own bodies, using their acidic blood to corrode the energy whips, creating openings for the others. The abomination Xenomorph, naturally, led the charge. Its formidable regenerative abilities and unmatched strength allowed it to violently crash through the network of golden red energy whips, forcefully pulling them apart. Several deviant Xenomorphs were also particularly active. With their superior deviant genes, they possessed the innate ability to absorb energy. Tendrils extended from their bodies, latching onto the energy whips and forcibly draining them to sever the connections. The army Duncan had painstakingly built was now beginning to show its true potential.